Okay, we are live stream as we speak. So thank you, Josh. So I'm calling the meeting to order. This was a special meeting this evening. So thank you for everyone in attendance. So roll call. It looks like everyone is in attendance. So thank you for that. Is there any disclosure of interest this evening?
Sherry is Sherry, Madam Chair, is Bobby here?
Yeah, yes,
Yes,
she's
I'm
there.
here.
Okay, I didn't see her on my screen, so okay.
Yeah, no, she's good. Any disclosure of interest?
No.
Okay, seeing them moving on. Confirmation of agenda. Everyone is in agreement with the agenda as presented. Bobby, do you have a resolution for that, please?
That the Aylmer Police Services Board approves the October 29th, 2020 agenda as written.
Motion by Bill.
Okay, and the seconder, Toby, and all in favor? Thank you. Just trying to gather my thoughts here. Okay, moving on. So the next item is Chief Horvat is going to give us an update on legislation and a briefing on gathering limits. So I will leave that up to you, Chief, if you want to go ahead.
Okay, through you, Madam Chair, I want to bring the Police Services Board members up to speed as far as what happened on Saturday, what our thought process was, and the action that was taken by Aylmer Police to deal with the protest. First of all, we received the information on Friday that there will be a Freedom March with the assembly at the Town Hall in the park in the back. I contacted Nick and had him put together an operational plan with the main focus being prevent breach of the peace and ensure that there's orderly flow of traffic, including pedestrians that were involved in the protest or in the march, and to ensure that there's no disturbance of peace whatsoever. Nick did put up an operational plan together, which has been shared with some of the board members and certainly the mayor, with the deployment strategy and the different resources that were deployed for that particular event. And as the event unfolded, from my perspective, and certainly Nick was on ground as an incident commander, and my understanding, there were no issues with respect to peaceful assembly. The march concluded and everybody dispersed after it was all said and done. Nick, if you want to speak to it further in terms of your involvement.
Sure, Chief. Through you, Madam Chair. So the operations plan went together Friday afternoon, and with our own resources, with our officers that work in day shift and our auxiliary unit, and we liaised with the municipal enforcement unit, who was our local bylaw contracted company. So they had 4 officers that they dedicated as well, and collectively we met at the station and had a briefing as to what our plan was and our goal was, and they kept me updated as events unfolded. Fortunately, there was just one incident of a kind of a counter protest where someone was playing loud music in a parking lot trying to drown out what was happening at the band shell, but they were spoken to and packed up. In the end, we estimated there was about 150 people in attendance. Everything was peaceful. There was no issues with traffic flow or anything like that, and I think our goals and objectives were met on that operational plan.
Okay, so speaking on the issue of peaceful assembly and the rights based on the current emergency measures that are in place, and some of the factors that we have to take into consideration, and I know that there's been a lot of discussion about the enforcement and why the emergency measures were not enforced specific to the gathering and the size of the gathering, and also the lack of those in attendance at the Freedom March. not wearing masks. So dealing with the size of the crowd and the current restrictions with respect to emergency measures, there are two issues that we have to address. One is with the Charter of Rights. People in Canada under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, under Section 2B specifically, which talks about freedom of expression, and Section 2C, which talks about freedom of peaceful assembly, citizens do have the right to do that. And there is no numbers that restrict them in terms of ability to gather for the purposes of expression or basically to assemble for a specific reason. So that's the number one challenge. And certainly from my experience dealing with protests, the constitutional rights of citizens always trump the underlying laws that are put in place, especially when they're temporary measures that are put in place from the provincial government or perhaps the local bylaw. I can assure you that our reasonable prospect of a conviction when the charter argument is factored in is almost non-existent. So to go down that road, I think, I mean, in my personal experience with these kind of things, the charter argument is always going to take precedent over any kind of a bylaw or temporary emergency order. I mean, I can speak to the fact that the same type of marches have been done in Toronto with my understanding up to 4,000 participants. Also one in Windsor with approximately 200 plus in attendance. And again, same type of enforcement or non-enforcement action was taken by those services simply because of the fact that our job, certainly from my perspective, and Nick's perspective as an incident commander, was to ensure the peace is kept and that there's no breach of the peace. With respect to face masks, and again, that is a challenge for us as a police agency when it comes to enforcement. One of the exemptions under the current legislation is that a person can say that they have a medical exemption. Yet they don't have to prove the fact that they have a medical exemption. In comparison, if you take a look at the seatbelt law, for example, you cannot get stopped by a police officer and tell the police officer, I have a medical exemption for not wearing a seatbelt without actually proving that you have a medical exemption. Same thing with the, when you're looking at the parking in a handicapped zone. You have to have proof that you are parked legally in that handicapped zone by producing certain documentation. And that is not the case with the current emergency measures when it comes to wearing a face mask. I'm sure that those that have developed those laws, perhaps we're looking at the citizens that they will do the right thing and look at the value of wearing the mask. But as we all know, not every citizen plans on abiding by those rules and those laws. And there are those that are going to challenge those laws that are put in place. And that's basically the situation that we have with respect to the mask. There is a group that, mind you, a very small percentage of people have that thought process, but you cannot go in there and start enforcement when, again, if we were to take that to court, in my opinion, we would not have a reasonable prospect of a conviction simply because of that loophole for the person to produce a medical certificate that exempts them from wearing the mask. Having said that, I also understand the government's position time with the epidemic that's going on, or pandemic that's going on, that we don't want people to run to doctors' offices asking for exemptions because they're tasked already with the medical emergencies that we're dealing with when it comes to this pandemic. So those are the challenges that we face as a police agency when it comes to enforcement. And certainly, I'm open to any questions that you may have, but that's the position that we took. And that's the position that we're going to take moving forward, provided that other things don't factor into it that would allow us to look at some legislation that would basically trump the Charter of Rights, and that's where we're at.
Hey, sorry about that. If anyone was speaking, my internet froze, so my apologies. Thank you both for the update. Does anyone have any questions towards either the chief or to Officer Nick? No? Anyone? Pete, yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To the chief or inspector, whoever. Chief, you mentioned that the provincial legislation doesn't appear to have any value as far as enforcement goes. What about the municipality? Were there any bylaw infractions to the best of your knowledge?
To my knowledge, first of all, I know that there was some talk about them having to require to obtain a license to utilize that particular space. We did not find out about that until the event was over, and certainly into Monday or Tuesday. And again, that's one of these things that they would have to work with a bylaw. And the fact is that we found out about this on Friday, and at that point, I contacted Nick, and we put an operational plan together. From the bylaw perspective, again, the restrictions in terms of the park and how that all plays out, we would have to weigh that in and perhaps look at summonses if there was any breaches of the bylaw with those that were organizing the event. And again, that's something that we need to take a look at perhaps in the future. And again, if there is such a restriction, then we would have to follow that up and look at, again, all the evidence and review it and see if we would have a reasonable prospect of a conviction based on all of the circumstances and the charter argument that could be presented with respect to their right to peaceful assembly. Mind you, they can't do that on a private property. So,
okay, thank you.
And in addition to that, just when it comes to the operational plan, like I said, Nick was there, and we had the resources that we felt we were comfortable with in terms of making sure that there was no breach of the peace. And we have worked with or contacted the organizer and liaised with her in terms of the do's and don'ts. And I don't know, Nick, if you have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, sure, Chief. So I spoke with the organizer directly, and as well, I know Southwest Public Health placed a phone call to her as well, just to explain what was required from the public health standpoint. So I'm not sure what took place in that conversation, but in the end, the protest went through anyways. That's all I can add to that.
Okay. All right. Did that answer your question, Pete?
Thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. All right. Then we can move on. We don't have a resolution for that, do we? No. Bobby, are you still online?
Sorry, yep.
Okay. So thank you. If nothing else needs to be said about that, we are going to wrap up this part of the agenda, and we are going to move into closed session. Bobby, do you have a resolution?
Sorry. Yes, that the Aylmer
That's
Police
okay.
Services Board does now is now adjourned to closed session at 5:44 p.m. for matter of personnel about identify individual, including municipal or local board employees.
Okay, could I have someone move that,
Move.
please? All right, Bill, and seconder Toby, all in favor? Okay, thank you, and that's carried. All right, so we'll just wait for Josh to end our live stream. So just give him a minute, and then we can talk about closed session.